Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Monday, June 22nd, and I'm joined here by the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin. Other members of the Board of Legislators that have joined us this morning are Legislator Colin Smith, Legislator Damon Marr, Legislator Lyndon Williams, and I don't know if we have anyone else from the board who's yet to come. Our Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, has joined us, as well as our County Attorney, John Nona. We have Tom Gleason, who's the Commissioner Sheriff, heads our Public Safety Department. And we have from our team who are integrally involved in this effort, Blanca Lopez, Crystal Collins, and we may be joined by a couple other people as we go along. And then with us today, and you're going to hear from both of them, Leroy Frazier and Mayo Bartlett, both of whom will serve as co-chairs of the task force that I'm going to be announcing today. Not quite a month ago, I had the chance to share my thoughts about the murder of George Floyd. And in those comments, which talked about what was happening in the society, I don't know that I said anything that was particularly new or groundbreaking versus all the other people that have reacted to that incident that happened almost a month ago. But I did announce at the time that we would pull together a group of people in a working group to work on, at that point in time, the program, the curriculum, and the different things that we do as part of educating through the police academy that the county constructs all of the first-time recruits to the police departments across Westchester County who have to go through a training program, and then wherever we have in-service training. Within the week, I had the opportunity to meet with both Mayo and Leroy, who we identified as people who are going to co-chair that effort. Within the week, Governor Cuomo announced that he wanted to see every jurisdiction that has a police department undertake a reform and reinvention effort. And once that was announced, we stopped. This would have happened probably a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. But we wanted to see what the governor was expecting us to do as a county government, and then to try to coordinate what we were already planning to do and incorporate those together. So that's why we're here today with this particular announcement. I would highlight that issues of police reform are not something we've just decided to look at. I've been working informally with a coalition for police reform that includes some of the people that are on this task force, some of the people that are here, as well as other members of the community. And we found it a helpful process to discuss with them all of the issues involving law enforcement, which involves not only our police, technically our public safety department, but also our corrections department and our probation department. We view those three departments as our law enforcement trio. And there have been some improvements and changes and things that we're proud of in each of those different departments as we've gone along. But what we face now requires us to take a more profound step, and that's what we're announcing today. In the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd, we know that it is not enough to rally. It is not enough to express heartfelt anger and frustration. And as I've said at some of the rallies when I've been asked to share a few words, it really isn't realistic for a white man to be the person to try to channel what is being felt in the African-American community, and for that matter, in the community of color, where those that are Latinx, those that are Asian, who feel some of the same feelings, feel frustrated. What is important for me to do, given my responsibilities of working with my team, Ken Jenkins particularly, and the other members of my team, is to have an appropriate governmental response so that it's not just about the rally of the moment, it's about what do we do as government to find ways to improve. And that those improvements are integrated within the system that we have now, where there are things that we're doing now that we're doing well, and we should recognize that. We should determine if we have to expand those things and the things that we're not doing to add to that effort so that we have something that is better than the way we're working today. And this group, of course, is now framed by the governor's direction by which we have to produce a result that will have to go before the Board of Legislators and be passed by them as well, and then submitted to the state, and state funding is at hand. But we're not doing this because of state funding. We're doing this because it's right. We're doing this because we need to make sure that every effort that we're making as a government through any of our different sources are showing the proper level of action and the proper level of understanding of what's happening out in the community so that we can avoid, to the greatest extent possible, the kinds of incidents that we've seen happen already. This group that we're impaneling today is going to be made up of a wide variety of people. There will be county and local police professionals on this committee, and I'm going to go over the names of them in a second, and you'll get released a list of the names so that you can take it from there. Members of the County Human Rights Commission and the county's police board, both existing institutions that have elements of public policy in this area. We have members of the African American clergy. We have many justice advocates that will be on this. This group is going to be tasked with looking at a series of different areas. The original mission to look at training of new recruits, the curriculum, what we do at the academy is now one of those areas, but not only those areas. We have 3 members of the Board of Legislators that will serve on this committee, and they have been tasked not only through this committee process, but by the chairman, Ben Boykin, to pull out whatever policy discussions are happening in the process of creating a report that has to be adopted and offer specific legislative initiatives as they see fit, so that whatever happens, it comes with a chance to change our laws or our policies or formalize our policies into law. We may have good policies, and we want to lock them into law so they're not just the whim of whoever's currently involved at the government at this point in time. What we have to do in looking at all of these things is to try to have a look at the overall structure of how we operate and what changes can be made that are good, and that requires an exhaustive search within a very short period of time. That is why we're very happy to have Mayo Bartlett and Leroy Frazier take on this responsibility. Mayo and Leroy separately are each lawyers. They're each former prosecutors. They have served and understand the prosecutorial side of this business. They also understand the interactions of government and how the administration of law enforcement deals with the legal side of law enforcement. Mayo has been a defense lawyer as well, so he understands the defense bar from that side. And both Leroy and Mayo will bring a depth of knowledge in this area, not only to help organize our review, but to be able to add their experience in that review. Let me just mention some of the people who have agreed to serve on this committee. It's a fairly long list. As I said, this will be released to you. Tom Gleason, our Commissioner Sheriff. Terrence Rayner, who's the Deputy Commissioner of our Department of Public Safety. Tejas Shanchala, who is the Executive Director of our Human Rights Commission. Reverend Doris Dalton, who is the Chair of the Human Rights Commission. Andre Early is on this commission. He currently works as one of the commissioners in Greenberg in the recreation area. Dr. Damia Harris Madden, who heads our Youth Bureau, will be on this. Lila Curtin, who is one of the senior advisors to the District Attorney. Chris McNerney, he's currently also with the District Attorney's Office, but he is in his own right a former chief of the Greenberg Police Department and is now head of the Police Chiefs Association for Westchester County. Kenneth Chamberlain, Jr., who we all know is a prominent activist and worker in the community, and also lost his father in an incident similar to the ones that we're going to discuss. Martin McDonald, who's a former leader of the Peekskill NAACP. Reverend Troy DeCohen, Vernon Heights Congregation Church in Mount Vernon. Reverend Dr. Stephen Pogue, who is the pastor, minister of Greater Centennial AME Zion Church in Mount Vernon. Chad Galanick, who is a retired police and corrections official, lives here in Westchester County. Barbara Hart, a prominent lawyer in Westchester. Karine Patino, also a prominent lawyer in Westchester County, active in the Latinx community. Chief Melvin Padilla, who is the head of the Bedford Police Department. Jack Alamany, who is currently serving as a judge in Scarsdale Village or Town. I forget which of the two jurisdictions, since it's a coterminous jurisdiction. We have 3 members of the Board of Legislators who are going to serve on this. The Honorable Terry Clements, the Honorable Lyndon Williams, and the Honorable Colin Smith, 2 of whom are with us today here. 3. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry's here as well. I'm sorry, I didn't see Terry before. Excuse me. Legislator Terry Clements is with us as well, a member of the committee. Robert Tucker, who is a member of our police board, county police board, has served for a number of years. Paul Hood, who's a former correction officer and also newly appointed to the police board. Michael Hagan, who is currently in the county police force and is head of the PBA for Westchester County Police. Robin Schlesinger, who is active in the LGBTI community. Judge Kathy Davidson, who's the administrative judge for the 9th Judicial District. And we have a couple of other individuals that may join us. I think I've missed Sharon. Let me make sure I have the name correctly here. Chandra Floyd McClary. Chandra Floyd McClary, who is from Mount Kisco. She's an educator by profession, and she'll serve on this committee. And she was suggested by Mayor Gina Pickenich, who's the mayor of Mount Kisco, and that is the one community where our county police department provides local police services. So we wanted to make sure someone was on the committee that represented that. And there may be some additional individuals that we add. We have a couple more out there. I'm sure these guys want me to stop adding names, but I think that their managerial skill can more than handle intelligent folks who are going to be working together. We have a staff team, which we usually have sort of informally for most of these boards and commissions, but this is too important not to put some of our best people on it. So the team leader will be Blanca Lopez. Blanca has been with us since the beginning of our administration. She has worked on criminal justice issues here on the executive floor, and in her prior was active as a school board member, former president of the Port Chester School Board, and she will serve as the team leader for this group. She'll be joined by Crystal Collins, who is with us here. She currently handles our faith-based liaison here on the 9th floor as well. Jason Whitehead, who is a member of the law department at the direction of John Nona, will be working with us. Sherilyn Pulver, who is one of the administrators in the probations department, will be joining with us, and Perry Cadenow, who heads up our Solid Waste Commission, but also has a background in law and in a prosecutorial background, having served in as an assistant attorney general in the state attorney general's office. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203 is the relevant order that outlines the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, which he has sent to all jurisdictions. In Westchester County, I think the number is there are 40 separate police entities, and they track most of the cities, towns, villages. There are a couple that don't have a police force because the underlying villages provide the police service. Of course, Mount Kisco is part of ours. So there's just a couple less than the 45 total municipalities. But he has required each local government with a police agency to perform, these words, a comprehensive review of deployments, strategies, procedures, and practices, and develop a plan to improve them. And the plan has to be completed by April 1st, 2021, and adapted by the local legislative body. So with that thought in mind, the formal output of this effort, this task force, will be to complete this particular plan, and we have set an internal deadline. It's not written in stone, of December 31st, which is almost exactly 6 months as we start our business, because we want to provide to the Board of Legislators the plan for the beginning of January, giving them 90 days to review and implement. But since 3 members of the legislature will be on the committee, and any member can attend a meeting, can submit ideas, this should not be something that will come as a surprise come January 1st. They'll be involved in the creation of the priorities here. I suspect, and Leroy and Mayo can talk about this probably conceptually at this point, but as they subdivide this work into pieces, I'm sure that members of the legislature will be involved in those subdivisions, and so there'll be a proper amount of information so that when it comes to the chairman to refer to his board, that we can meet the April 1st deadline adopted by the local body. There's a certification process that has to happen here. It's if we do the report, everything else is sort of mechanical, but they want to show that the community stakeholders are involved in this process. And so the task that is before Mayo and Leroy will be to make sure that we include all of the different stakeholders, and they identify in the governor's order that membership and leadership of local police department, members of the community, interested nonprofit and faith-based community groups, the district attorney's office, the local public defender, local officials, and there must be a plan for public comment. So there will be public comment as the plan is put together, and then as it approaches the board has normal structures before they vote for anything to have public hearings and public conversation. So there'll be at least 2 rounds of dialogue with the community at large. And with every one of the constituencies represented here, I expect there's going to be vigorous debate and vigorous discussion. In a democracy, that's perfectly fine. That is exactly what we want. And if points of view diverge, then let them diverge. Let them have that opportunity to air out those different things from different standpoints. Governor also says they're looking for evidence-based police strategies to include force policy, procedural justice, systemic racial bias in policing, diversion programs, restorative justice practice, community-based outreach and conflict resolution, problem-oriented policies, hotspots policing, focused deterrence, crime prevention. I only gave you guys 6 months on this. Violence, how about 7? Maybe I should give you 7 months. Violence prevention and reduction intervention. So the governor has laid this out with a great degree of specificity, and I'm sure they're going to look very carefully at these things. But I've always been, in my experience in government, my time when I was in the county legislature for 13 years, my 2.5 years as county executive, that Westchester County takes these things seriously. I'll give you a completely unrelated example of that, nothing to do with what we're talking about today. For many years, there was a desire to have early voting in New York State. It was a political debate. It finally passed in January. It passed in the spring of 2019, a year ago. And we had early voting for the first time last year. We've had early voting for the second time this year. Westchester County in population is the 7th or 8th largest county. We'll find out when the census comes out if we jump ahead of Erie County or not. But we're about even with them. Nassau is bigger than us. Suffolk is bigger than us. And the 4 major boroughs of New York City are bigger than us. We saw statistics, Ken and I don't know if it's up to date as of yesterday, probably a couple of days ago, in which Westchester County was the 2nd largest respondent in votes in early voting. And by a lot. More people voted early in Westchester County as of Friday than in Manhattan. More people voted early in Westchester County than Queens. Queens is over 2 million people, and we're struggling to get up to the 1 million mark. Why do I bring that reference into here? Westchester County takes these things seriously. We don't know, our friends in other counties. We work with them cooperatively. We certainly have no undue pride and pound our chest. But we take things seriously. And we also take it with a balance and with reason. We are not here to try to find an excuse. We're not here to look for people that we can shout out on and make them the focus. We want to make things better. That's the mission here. And that's what we're all going to try to do. And I'm very pleased that we have a diverse group of people, not only by their demographics, but by their talent and their experience that will help us accomplish these things. At the end of the day, when the report is completed, it will go to the legislature. We'll also go to the executive branch because ultimately I'll have to sign whatever the final document is. And we're going to have a robust discussion. And I think our friends in the press will want to ask us 1,000 questions today, but they'll ask us 1,000 questions when the report comes out. And we will try to answer all of them as straightforwardly as possible. Our friends who are managing the police function are certainly going to be part of this discussion, but I think in fairness to them, they have an opportunity to think through the process and participate in it. And those of us who are making policy will dialogue with all elements that are part of this as we try to make up how we want to handle it. So with that, I'd like to ask Leroy Frazier, followed by Mayo Bartlett, each to share some of their thoughts. They will be the 2 co-chairs of the committee. I lied when I said they had 7 months. They only have 6 months. But they're both very talented men. We're very fortunate to have their ability working with us on this task. Leroy?
Good morning. I'd like to first thank the county executive for giving me the opportunity to serve in this capacity. I welcome it. I think that it is very timely and it's very important. Although I've been a resident of Westchester County for 30 years, I've spent most of that time working in the criminal justice area in New York City and elsewhere around the state. So it's good upon retirement to come home to Westchester and be able to use a lot of what I've learned over the years to try to help Westchester County move forward as it is. I came to find out upon coming and beginning to work in the area that it already has standards that, in my view, are better than what I've seen in the city and elsewhere in some of the areas, particularly over with the programs that are in the Westchester County Jail. Now, this group, as you all know, is a very diverse group of people coming from different areas. And I've seen over the years that when you bring together well-intentioned people, that you can have that debate and have that discussion, and you can then move forward. Because I think that it's clear from all the names that I've heard and everything that I've read about them, they have similar goals that are important goals that are what we are looking for here. And that is, first of all, to make sure that the people of Westchester County are safe, so we're talking about public safety. We're also talking about engendering trust between law enforcement and the community. Everybody wants that. And at the same token, everybody wants to see the criminal justice system perceived as treating each individual equally, regardless of their background, their orientation, or anything like that. So by looking to try and get best practices and trying to determine what are the best training principles to acquire, we can then move forward to try to reach those goals. Mayo and I have begun talking already. We've begun doing some research. We do know that there will be a public forum so that we can get input from the community. And so my first question when I had a meeting with the county exec was, because when he announced it, he said he wants something in 30 days, was, well, when exactly do these 30 days start? But you know what? They've started in the sense of our attention and what we are giving to this. We're taking it very seriously, and I look forward to working together on this group.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to thank County Executive George Latimer, Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, and the Westchester County Board of Legislators for having the vision to convene us and to actually do so before mandated by the governor. And I can tell you that in my estimation, this is a remarkably unique opportunity for us to work to make Westchester County not only better than it already is, but perhaps the best in terms of public safety that exists in the world. And I look forward to working with Leroy Frazier. Leroy and I have already discussed this, and the thing that I think will give us an opportunity to be uniquely successful is that no one that's going to be involved is new to dealing with this issue. So in my estimation, we have honest brokers from every walk of life. We have multiple disciplines. We have people with tremendous amounts of talent, but more importantly, I think people are bringing a real true interest in solving this problem. And I expect that we will be looking at best policies and best practices, not only that exist in the United States, but I'm willing to look even beyond that. And if there's something elsewhere in another country that's particularly useful, that looks like it can be great for us to implement in our model, I'm all for doing that. And I believe that if we all come together and we work together, that we will have the best training. We'll look at what training should look like, how long it ought to be. We'll also look at perhaps who the candidates for law enforcement should be and what things are unique in an individual that allows him or her to take the difficult job of being a member of law enforcement. And we'll be able to work to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. And again, I can say that before George Latimer was county executive, before Ken Jenkins was deputy county executive, before Ben Boykin was a member of the County Board of Legislators, we've worked together. And we've all understood that we are only as strong as the weakest among us. And I think that that can never be overstated. This is an opportunity for us basically to codify something as opposed to simply having executive orders, which can be wonderful. However, when the executive leaves, you lose that executive order. This is an opportunity for real, meaningful structural change. I think that we can debate terminology, whether we call it reform or something else. In my estimation, we're looking at recreating and restructuring public safety, not just for the 21st century, but so that 100 years from now, when young people who either live in Westchester County or who happen to venture into Westchester County for whatever reason, will be able to do so with the understanding that they will expect to be treated professionally. They'll expect that their law enforcement is capable and that they have the training to be able to provide whatever services are necessary. And where necessary also for us to explore perhaps strengthening other areas of government that can complement law enforcement so that our police are not necessarily looked to be the mental health providers or to fill services that they were not trained to perform. So I'm extremely excited about it. I think about my children and hopefully their children and what this will mean and the fact that we will have actually legislation that's structurally there. We will also, I expect, hopefully come up with some suggestions for statewide opportunities to change the structure of public safety and law enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, County Executive, and thank you, Leroy and Mayo. I think one important thing to be said is that before Governor Cuomo's executive order, Westchester was already moving forward with putting this task force together because the county executive had already announced it. Again, Westchester County always ahead of the curve, always thinking strategically and always moving forward. Let me say that this task force that's been announced this morning is outstanding, the members on the task force. I know many of them. I've worked with many of them, as Mayor has said. I know from the Board of Legislators, I appointed Legislator Lyndon Williams, who spent his life in working with reform and judicial reform. Colin Smith, who serves as chair of our Public Safety Committee. Terry Clemens will be there as members of Black Democrats of Westchester, and we may have Kitley Koval from our police board may come in and out with the committee. So we've got people from the board who really understand this issue, and all members of the board will be able to provide comments and attend the meetings. The important thing is that this is a task force that is going to get to work, to do things, to make substantive and fundamental changes in how we do policing in Westchester County, and hopefully will be a model for New York State and a model for America. That's what we're trying to do here, starting not only with training, but Mayor said one important thing: who should be serving as police? We need to start with the recruitment effort so that we recruit people who have it in their DNA and in their system to know how to be police, to be sensitive to the community needs, to be important servants to the public. Leo, I've met and know him. Mel and I don't want to know how many years we go back. We're members of Union Baptist Church, but we go back many, many years. We work together on numerous issues. This task force really provides a unique opportunity for the numerous individuals that are going to be coming together, that are going to be providing input. And then it will come to the Board of Legislators for us to go through and do our due diligence, and then to approve the appropriate legislation so that we will get it to Albany as required by April 1st, 2021. But may be along the way strategic points where legislation may need to come before the board, and we will also take action there. But the board will make sure, as part of its due diligence, we'll have the appropriate committee meetings. We will have appropriate hearings where necessary, because it is going to be so important that we have the input from the people of Westchester County. So I'm looking forward to working with the task force, getting the information that they put together. Obviously, the members of the Board of Legislators will be there. If members of the task force want to come in small areas and talk about issues, we'll be there, because we want a product and actions taken that will be the role model for New York State and for America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. So just before we go to questions, our next steps after this will be we're sending out letters of appointment to each of the individuals on this. They've already verbally said that they've agreed to serve, so they get their formal letters of appointment. Mayo and Leroy will discuss when the first meeting of the group will occur. I assume it will have to occur, as all things are now, electronically, using a WebEx system or Zoom or something of that nature. And then I suspect that in fairly short order, they'll be able to identify how they want to break this task into pieces and perhaps have individuals within each of those different groups. The staff support team that's been assigned to them, Blanca Lopez leading that team, will help work through all of those different situations. And then at some point fairly early on, I suspect they'll announce what date or dates, plural, they have for public input sessions. And so those will be the next public face activities that you'll see from this group. We'll work with them informally as they do their work formally. And since members of the board are on, staff people are on, we'll all be well updated on it. And at some point in time, perhaps 3 months down the road or so, we'll give you an update, a formal update in this kind of a fashion, questions and answers, something like that. We'll open it up to questions now, then I'll just have a few closing comments. Michelle?
Was the unfortunate George Floyd incident your impetus for originally wanting to form this task force? And as Mr. Boykin said, you were in the forefront. You did it before this kind of state mandate came down.
Yeah, we originally were meeting informally with a group of individuals identified as a coalition for police reform. As I alluded to, since very early in our administration, we were meeting initially on a monthly basis, and then we were meeting, I think, every other month. And it had some of the members who serve on this committee now, and then some other individuals as well. And we had gone through issues that we began our administration with. What's the implementation of Raise the Age, which is a corrections initiative more than it is. We were just talking about the implication of the changes in bail and discovery, which came with the first of the new year this year. We had dialogue about what types of changes we needed to make in both police, probation, and corrections, and some of the innovative programs. We had created both a corrections board and a probation board, which included some members of that reform group, to parallel the fact that we had a police board in place, and we expanded the police board to give a greater diversity. All of those things happened before the terrible incident with George Floyd. Once that happened, we immediately went into action and realized that we needed to pull things together to have the kind of dialogue that we're having now. So all of that I announced right in the aftermath of George Floyd. But we were working on these issues beforehand, but now they had a greater urgency. And then, of course, when the governor, I guess a week ago Friday, indicated through his public announcement in the executive order, then we knew that whatever structure we had, we ought to have it coalesce with what the governor was requiring rather than run parallel structures. So this became an opportunity for us to take what we were working on, give this the structure and format to it, so that the end product is the report which will go to the governor. But along the way, the end report will have with it specific legislative initiatives and specific policy initiatives and procedural initiatives. Now, this is where the leadership of the Public Safety Department becomes critical. Tom Gleason, Terrence Rayner, Chief Hodges, Chief Calabrese, the various captains and so forth will be dialoguing, as part of this process. And I think it's important to understand that we have great respect for the way our county Department of Public Safety works. Not everybody realizes that all of the patrol officials have body cameras. That's not true all over the county for every police department, but it is true with the county safety department. It is also true that they have an implicit bias component in their training. How we change and improve is yet to come, but I think we have the opportunity now through this process to coalesce specific actions and activities. And as I said, some of them may be legislative, some of them may be policy-driven, procedural, and it'll depend on how the discussions are, then how we deal with the leadership of the Public Safety Department to try to implement it. But whatever we do, we're going to be very public about it. There's not going to be things done, off in a corner and that's it. We'll be upfront as to how we go forward on this.
And you said your internal timeline is December 31st for what?
December 31st for the report that will ultimately be what goes to the governor. As I started to read it off from the executive order, John Nona, who is here, reviews all the executive orders as county attorney and interprets for us what they mean in practical terms. The report that has to go to the state on April 1st is the end product report. And we're asking this working group to complete, we'll call it a draft because it's subject to other modifications, but to complete a draft of that report, like a next to final, penultimate draft by December 31st. Then it goes to the Board of Legislators, and we recognize that the legislature has the authority and the right to modify things. They can discuss, debate, and make changes to the report as they see fit. Obviously, we have to agree to those changes because we too have the authority to be able to approve or not approve the final product. But that's what we'll work through in our negotiations. That, Michelle, is what will happen, I perceive, in January, February, March of next year. I don't know if it'll take 90 days. If we're working together all the way through, and members of the board are on the committee, and also members who are not on the committee, they're not shut out from the process. They're included as well with their ideas and their input. They may not be a member of the committee, but they certainly are not going to be ignored. So it's important to have that dialogue happen over the next 6 months. The deadline was set by the governor for April 1st. And the governor set the requirement that it be passed by the Board of Legislators. So, we had to give the board at least 90 days to review it on their terms, which then, defined what amount of time we had for our task force to work. Now, the task force does not go out of business on December 31st. Their appointment will continue on through the spring. And depending on what happens, we may, see what the bounce back is. We'll discuss that as we go forward. There's a lot of things we don't know yet, and we'll just have to play it out and see where it takes us. Okay. Do we have any questions remote? Okay. If not, then I thank you for taking the time today. We'll be back again at 2 o'clock today to give the COVID update. We'll be doing COVID updates for another 2 weeks. We're 1 day away from phase 3, which is tomorrow. All the metrics put us on beam for that. We'll talk about that at 2 o'clock. 2 weeks from today, we will complete, we hope, the 2-week period under phase 3. We'll be a day away from phase 4, and it will be at that point that we will cease the daily updates on COVID. But we recognize that, if we were having, as we did on February 1st or even March 1st, we had conversations about what are the priority issues in the county. We'd be talking about the airport master plan, the census program, the food scrap recycling, building affordable housing, making sure that our budget was balanced with a variety of different activities. Those were, on February 1st, sort of the major issues we were talking about. Now we have a pandemic that we've been dealing with. I can't even say managing it, but dealing with it for the last 3.5 months. We have a fiscal issue that's dramatic, to which we will address, I think, a little later this week, if not this week, then next. But we'll be public about what we plan to do in that. And now the social justice issue, which we are addressing with today's step forward. So we have 3 major issues that have become so dominant on our agenda that people forget that we had all those other issues that are still out there. We have all of those tasks in front of us. You sign up for this, and you have an allotted amount of time, and you deal with whatever comes your way. And we'll continue to be as professional as we can in dealing with this. But I'm going to close with where I began. I have great respect for the people of Westchester County. I have great respect for the Department of Public Safety. We're going to meet with some of the members later this week, have a dialogue with them. I know that there's talent in this county, and that's what we're tapping in this community. We're in this committee. We're going into the community of Westchester County and asking people to serve without compensation, to bring their ideas and bring their personal abilities inside to help us go forward. That has always been the great strength of Westchester County, and it predates my administration, and I know it will follow in the future administrations that will succeed mine. But we want our neighbors to know that we take our jobs seriously, we take these challenges seriously, and we're addressing them straightforwardly. I'm George Latimer, County Executive. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk again at 2 o'clock.